All right, so we've got our arm set up, and hopefully, unfortunately, you do have to do the other side yourselves. I do apologize. That is, just kind of the workflow here, trying to make sure everything matches up as far as sizes and with your NURBS controls. I'll show you how we can duplicate NURBS controls over to the other side, but sometimes we, especially for the forearm, we need to do that before we parent them over, because if you duplicate these now, it'll duplicate the joints with it, and we don't want that. So I'll show you with the foot control, setting it up, what those steps are. So that being said, let's work with the foot control. First thing we want to do is create the IK handle. So we're going to go up to create, no, we're going to go to our rigging menu, and it's its third button here, or we can go to our rigging tool set and go up here to skeleton create IK handle. We want to make sure to hop in the option box, because as we've done previously, we did for the neck do a single chain. For this, we very specifically want a rotate plane solver. Very important. Hit your reset tool or change this to from single chain to rotate plane solver. We're going to select the hip and then the ankle. Now, if you get the error in Maya where we won't let you select for the create IK handle controls the hip and the ankle, I apologize, and that sucks, but here's how to fix it. So I'm going to show those hip and ankle joints here in the outliner. Then I'm going to go back to that tool, the create IK handle. Instead of clicking in the viewport, I'll click hip, control click left ankle, and it'll create it. And if it doesn't immediately create it after you select ankle, just hit enter on your keyboard and you should be good. If you do not have a bend in the side of your knee, your ankle will probably bend backwards or to the right or to the left, and you've done this wrong. Step back, make sure you have in the side a slight bend forward for the hip to actually, the knee joint is positioned just a little bit forward from the hip and the ankle, and that tells Maya for this IK handle, hey, we're going to position this around. Also notice that as I move this IK handle around, like that foot control is just rotating however it wants. So we need to set up extra controls for that. And what we're going to do is what's called an inverse foot rig. And it's kind of this tried and true method for giving us a nice ball roll up on our toes. So I'm going to start setting that up. And we need to create more joints for the feet. And we're going to make sure that orientation's proper and move from there. So I'm going to go up here to my joint tool and start clicking here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure we can at least see the wireframe of our geometry, because I want to kind of place this at the heel, this first joint at the heel of the geometry. Now I'm not branching it off of any of the previous joints that I have, making new joints. So I'm going to make it out here at the heel, and then we're going to go out to the toe. And then we're going to go actually back to the ball. And then from the ball, we're going to go back up to our ankle. And then we're going to hit enter. And this is why it's called a reverse foot rig. That's because we're creating these joints kind of in the inverse of how we currently have them, but we're adding the heel in. So let's give these joints a name. So we're going to say L underscore, because this is we're going to do the left side. So we're going to say reverse foot. So RF underscore heel. And then I've not been adding joints to mine. You can see up here, clavicle, hip, but you can always just underscore JNT if you really want to. But I've not been doing that, so I'm not going to continue. I'm going to continue not doing that, just to make it consistent. But feel free to add joint so you know what you're working with. Then here, left RF ball, making sure to put the RF for reverse foot in that name, because that's going to help us orient, make sure that these are two separate pieces. Oh, I did that wrong too, because this is the ball. Let's just leave that left underscore now, because this is the toe. Toe, left underscore RF underscore ball. And then finally, L underscore RF underscore ankle. Because we already have an ankle, ball, and toe joints. We don't have a heel, but we want to be able to differentiate these from the other joints that we have. Something that's also going to help us out is I'm going to select all of those new joints that we had, and I'm going to go to my radius over here, and I'm going to increase them. Now, depending on the scale of your scene, you may need to increase it less. So I went 2 for the radius for all of these. You may only have to do 1 or 1.5, something around that range, just so that it's slightly larger so we can see what we're doing. Now, if I hop into my perspective view, I did all of that in the side view. That way, all of these joints would kind of be lined up. But we can see it's not lined up with our left foot. So I'm going to select that heel. I'm going to hide my geometry, and I'm going to snap this over holding the V key and only moving on the X axis. Snap it to that joint there. Let's double check the orientation. So I'm going to go up here to my previous joint, not that IK handle, but the joint, and say display, transform display. We're going to break that off because we want to show the local rotation axis. X is pointing down, Z is pointing left, Y is pointing up. Now let's select all of these and show them as well. Actually, I'm going to hide, let's get in there again. I'm going to hide this one. So we know X is pointing down, Z is pointing that direction, and Y is pointing up. So let's show these. X is pointing down, Z is pointing in the left direction, Y is pointing up. Then we get out to the ball where X is pointing back. Now remember the direction of this chain is we are going forward to the toe, then back to the heel. So this orientation is actually correct because it's kind of flipping and heading in the other direction. Goes back to the heel, X points, this one is continuing this orientation, so that Z kind of flips over. Y is still pointing up, that's good. But this X is now pointing up to the ankle, and the ankle is all wrong, so we can correct that. Component mode, show that question mark, and we can just point this in the right direction. So Y would be pointing back, Z would be pointing left, and X would be pointing up. Actually, no, that's the incorrect. So I would want the Y to be pointing back that direction. There we go. So just literally inverse, flipping it over inversely of what I had previously because I was doing it to this orientation, but you got to remember we're heading in the other direction with this reverse foot rig. The end joint here doesn't matter as much with its orientations. As long as you get these first 3, if this end one confuses you, don't worry about it. But the first 3 here for this reverse foot rig is important. I'm going to select all of those joints again and hide their local rotation axis. Now here comes the fun part, because what we have to do is do a bunch of constraints and set up our controls so that we actually can utilize this joint rig. Oh, I'm going to get out of component mode. There we go. So now I can actually select this up. Because we want this to drive the actual joints of our rig and use this IK handle control. So to start this up, we really need 3 major joint constraints. So I'm going to select the ankle, the RF ankle, this new ankle that we created. Again, naming convention, that's why that really helps us out. And then, whoops, let's hit F, there we go. And then I'm going to shift select the IK handle because we are going to constrain these 2 together so that when this moves, it moves the IK handle. So let's go up here to our constraint menu, and we're going to use a point constraint because this is just doing translates. It's not doing rotation or scale, it's just doing translates. So let's open up that option box. I'm going to reset my settings, so this may be what you look at. Just make sure to check on maintain offset. And then I'll click apply. So again, just to really quickly before I click add or apply, select this new joint for the ankle, RF ankle, shift select that IK handle that we've created. I need to rename, we'll talk about that here in just a second. Maintain offset with point constraint is on, and say add. So now whenever this ankle moves, the IK handle moves with it. Anytime you do something like what I'm doing right now, make sure to hit undo. That way it doesn't mess up your joint chains. Let's go ahead and rename that IK handle as well. So I'm going to go over here to L underscore IK handle. Let's say add foot underscore IK handle and get rid of that 3 at the end. Also, previously, I know we turned on shapes. I'm no longer parenting via that method currently. So I'm going to turn shapes back off. There we go. Next constraint that we need to do is going to be the ball to the joint of the ankle. So our original ankle joint. So we're going to select the ball of the RF, and then we're going to go up here and select the ankle. Now, I could do it in my outliner, and that would make my life a little bit easier. So that's the right hip. So I can hold the control and select the left ankle here. But since I made my radius larger for the RF ankles, or the RF joints, I can hold shift and select it here in the viewport because I know it's that tinier joint. So again, this order of operations is the RF ball to the original ankle joint, which is tiny on the inside there. And we can see that selection here in the outliner. Now, we're not going to use a point constraint because that's translate. Instead, we're going to use an orient constraint because whenever this joint moves, I want this joint to be like, hey, I want to look at you. I want to look at where that original ankle joint is going. So we're going to go up to constrain, orient, option box, just to make sure maintain offset is turned on. I always like to get in here and say edit reset, just in case from previous times I've used this tool, or if you're using shared computers like in a professional environment, just good to get in that habit. Then I'm going to say add. So now this ball, this reverse foot ball, is always going to look at our original ankle joint, which is fantastic. We need one more constraint for this foot rig before we can start connecting everything together. And this time we're going to go with our reverse foot toe. And instead of the reverse foot ball, we're going to go to our original ball joint, which is the smaller one, which is why increasing the radius of that is what I did earlier. And again, if you can't see that, just make sure to open it up in your outliner so that you can find that ball. And we're going from the RF toe to that left ball. And we're going to go to constrain, and we're going to do another orient constraint and make sure that maintain offset is still checked on. Fantastic. I know it may not look like much, but what we just did with all of those constraints is now when I select this heel and I go to move it, the whole foot moves together and it's not randomly rotating wildly, and we can control it based off of that heel joint, right? So if we think of our character walking, we can see that. I'm going to hit undo just to make sure I've undone all of those movements that I was doing here with my toe or with my heel joint, because we want to make sure all of that is staying as it is, not messing with the translates. We don't want to reset those to 0, just rotate to zeroed out. So I'm just going to hit undo enough just to get that kind of testing this out of the way. Now notice here, if I go way down, it breaks apart, and just keep that in mind because that's important. That's something we're going to fix up later on. Cool. All right. So let's now create a control for this foot. So I'm going to go up to curves, add ourselves a NURB circle. We're going to recall it L_foot_CTRL. And you know the drill here. Just move it into place. And very particularly, I like to keep my foot control. Some people do them like at the ankle here. And I think that's fine and dandy. But I like to keep them at the base of the foot, so I know where that is going to contact the ground. And I'm going to scale this to kind of match my foot. And as always, I can go in here to the control vertices and really kind of just outline my foot a little bit better. You know, we got this arch on the inside. We got the heel, which kind of comes to a little bit of a flat, still rounded though. Oops. Don't want to select that IK handle by accident. And this side is a bit too far out, so we're going to just straighten and flatten that out a bit. The only thing with extra I'm going to do with this foot control is snap that pivot to the ankle, because that is where we want this to kind of pivot from. So with that foot control selected, remember D on our keyboard will allow us to move the pivot point, and holding V will allow us to snap to joints. And I've hidden the polygons with Alt+2, and if that doesn't work for you, you can go up here to show and turn polygons off. And it looks like that didn't get quite snapped to that because I only did it in the Z, so I'm going to make sure to also do it in the other axes as well. So press and hold V and we can snap that everywhere. And then hit D to finalize. And At this point, before I start parenting stuff up, we can go ahead and mirror this over. Also, I need to freeze those transforms, right? So let's go up here, freeze transforms, delete by type history. And I want to show you another way we can mirror like controls over, like I was talking about earlier. And it's actually, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to duplicate this. So don't copy paste, right? Select the left foot control D. So now it's left foot control 1, but we can rename that, right, to R foot control. I will snap it to that other ankle. And then I will scale it in that X axis to a -1. So now it's just a duplicate on the other side. I need to freeze those transforms. It's inverted and we're good to go. So later on when I start building this other foot rig up, I'll have that foot control to mess with everything. But for now, we can go back to our original left foot and we're going to parent the heel to this left foot. So I'm going to select the heel, that reverse foot heel that we just created, to this control and hit P on my keyboard. And now this is parented up and I can start animating this. Again, that this part right here we'll fix later on when we add stretchy. But we're not going to push our foot that far anyway. For the most part of our class, but we'll show you how to add stretchy in. But yeah, I can select the control of this foot, rotate it around. We're now going to add in that ball roll in this next part for this reverse foot rig. Fantastic, cool beans.